I never thought I'd be the type of man to sit down and write a confession like this. My life has always looked simple on the outside. A husband, a father, the dependable one in the family. But beneath that calm surface, I've carried a secret so heavy it sometimes feels like it will swallow me whole. I'm writing this anonymously because what happened one night inside my own home is something I can't tell a soul. Not my wife, not my daughter, not my stepson, and certainly not the friend who became the center of my greatest mistake. It began as an ordinary weekend. My stepson had invited his best friend over, a young man who had practically grown up around our family. He wasn't a stranger in the house. He had been coming around for years, eating at our dinner table, joking with the kids, helping move furniture, even sitting with us during holidays when his own family traveled. By the time he turned 21, he had grown into a confident, sharp young man, mature beyond his years, and frankly, more charismatic than I'd ever been at that age. That weekend, my daughter was home from university. She had recently turned 22, her energy filling the house with the same light she always carried as a teenager, but now sharper, more independent. She and my stepson's best friend had always been friendly, sometimes teasing each other like siblings, sometimes laughing over inside jokes I didn't understand. When she walked into the living room that evening and saw him lounging on the couch, their eyes met with a spark that I wish I hadn't noticed. "Long time no see," she said, smiling in that effortless way of hers. "Yeah, it's been a while," he replied, his tone low, calm, almost too composed for a casual greeting. I should have brushed it off. But something in the air shifted that night. Dinner was loud, full of laughter, and yet I felt oddly out of place at my own table. My wife sat across from me, half engaged in the conversation, half buried in her phone as she often was. My daughter leaned in toward him as they exchanged stories, her laughter coming quicker than usual, his gaze lingering longer than polite. By the time the plates were cleared and the house quieted down, I had an uneasy feeling in my chest. My daughter announced she'd let the boys use the living room since her old bedroom was still cluttered with boxes. "They'll crash here," she said casually. My wife went off to bed early, and I lingered in the kitchen with a drink, unable to shake the sense that something was unfolding just beneath the surface. It was after midnight when I padded down the hallway, glass in hand, and paused near the living room. The lights were dimmed, the soft glow of the TV flickering against the walls. My stepson had already gone upstairs, leaving his friend stretched out on the couch, half watching the screen. My daughter sat cross-legged on the rug, her hair falling over her shoulder, her laughter low and private. I should have turned away. I should have respected their space. But instead, I lingered, my heartbeat betraying me. The way his eyes followed her, the way she brushed her hand against his knee while pretending it was casual, it told me more than I wanted to know. Later, when I finally tried to sleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I could hear faint voices downstairs, then soft silence. The kind of silence that doesn't belong to sleep, but to secrets. Around 3 in the morning, I slipped out of bed, restless. I told myself I only wanted a glass of water, but the truth is I wanted to know. The house was dark, quiet. My footsteps on the wooden floor seemed too loud. As I passed the living room, I caught sight of something I'll never forget. My daughter leaning too close to him, her hand lingering against his chest, his arm wrapped loosely around her waist. They didn't see me, and I didn't let them. I stood frozen in the shadows, a mix of shock and something I refused to fully name washing over me. I crept back upstairs without a sound, my throat tight, my thoughts tangled in a mess of guilt and disbelief. I told myself it was just flirtation, that maybe I'd imagined it. But deep down, I knew better. That night marked the beginning of a dangerous curiosity inside me, a curiosity that would lead me down a path I never expected to walk. What I witnessed in the dark of my own house planted a seed, and in the weeks that followed, it grew into temptation I couldn't control. I should have stopped it then. But instead, I let myself be pulled deeper into something that would soon become my biggest secret, my biggest sin. For days after that night, I couldn't shake the image from my mind. The way her hand rested against his chest, his arm snug around her waist, their eyes speaking a language that didn't need words, it played over and over in my thoughts like an unwanted recording. I told myself I'd misread it, that maybe it was innocent. But a part of me, the part one kept locked away from the world, knew it wasn't. Life went back to normal on the surface. My wife continued her routines, her early mornings at the gym, her endless scrolling on social media, her habit of going to bed long before me. My stepson busied himself with classes and work. My daughter returned to university but promised she'd be home soon. And him, the best friend, he became a ghost I couldn't stop thinking about. It's strange how temptation begins. It doesn't crash in like a storm, it seeps slowly, drip by drip, until the floor beneath your feet is soaked. At first, it was just a memory. Then it became a question, did they do more that night? Then another, would it happen again if I weren't around? And finally, the question that ruined me, what if it was me instead of him? That thought should have disgusted me. But instead, it lit a fire I couldn't put out. The next time I saw him was a month later. He came over again, this time to help my stepson with some project. I told myself I'd stay out of their way, but when he walked through the door, taller, broader, his easy smile pulling people toward him like gravity, I felt that same unease rise in my chest. My daughter wasn't home this time, but I could see the trace of her still in his eyes, like he hadn't forgotten either. At dinner, we sat across from each other. He asked me questions, respectful, polite, but there was something else there too. A subtle confidence, the kind young men develop when they realize women look at them differently now. When my wife excused herself to take a call, it was just the two of us. His eyes lingered on me longer than necessary, and for a second, it felt like he knew my thoughts. Like he was daring me to admit them. I looked away, but the moment stuck like glue. That night, lying next to my wife, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, my body tense, my mind racing. I kept hearing his laugh, seeing the way he leaned back in his chair. Casual, unbothered. It wasn't just attraction, it was something more dangerous. He represented youth, vitality, a spark I hadn't felt in years. My wife and I had grown distant, our intimacy reduced to routine touches and polite kisses goodnight. And now here was someone who embodied everything I felt I'd lost: energy, attention, hunger. Weeks passed, but the current between us only grew stronger. He started stopping by more often, sometimes when my stepson wasn't even home. He'd knock on the door with some excuse, returning a book, borrowing tools, asking about a ride. I knew the difference between coincidence and intention. His eyes lingered too long, his questions too personal, his silences too loaded. Then came the moment that sealed my fate. It was late one evening, my wife had gone out with friends, and the house was unusually quiet. He dropped by to grab something he'd left behind, but he stayed. We sat in the living room, a football game playing on the muted TV. We didn't talk much, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy, charged, like every second was a countdown. At one point, I looked at him, really looked. And when his eyes met mine, I saw it, that same spark I'd seen between him and my daughter weeks ago. But this time, it was directed at me. A glance that lingered a second too long. A glance that changed everything. I should have stood up, shaken his hand, and told him good night. But instead, I sat frozen, the air thick between us. My pulse quickened, my throat tightened. And when he finally smiled, small, knowing, dangerous, I felt something inside me give way. That was the night I realized the line I swore I'd never cross was already crumbling. The seed had been planted, and it was only a matter of time before it grew into something I couldn't control. I didn't touch him that night. I didn't say anything reckless. But the look we shared, the silence we allowed, it was the kind of moment you don't come back from. From that point forward, every time he walked into my house, I wasn't the same man. I wasn't the dependable father, the loyal husband, the protector of the home. I was a man living on the edge of his own ruin, waiting for temptation to finally devour him. And when it did, it wasn't subtle. It came like fire. I had always thought of myself as disciplined. A man who knew where the line was, and who kept to his side of it no matter what. But all that discipline, years of self-control, years of being the steady one, crumbled one night when the house was quiet, and temptation finally cornered me. It was a Friday. My wife had left for the weekend on a work retreat. My stepson was away with friends, and my daughter wasn't due back until the following week. For once, I had the house to myself. At least, that was the plan. Around 7 in the evening, I heard a knock at the door. I opened it to find him standing there, hands in his pockets, that easy smile tugging at his lips. "Hey, I was just passing by," he said. "Figured I'd see if your stepson was around." "He's out of town," I replied. "Ah, guess I'll just hang out for a bit then, if you don't mind." He said it casually, but his eyes lingered on mine, searching, waiting. I should have told him no. Instead, I stepped aside and let him in. We sat in the living room, the hum of the TV filling the silence. At first, it was harmless, talking about work, about the game on the screen, about nothing in particular. But then the conversation slowed. His eyes stayed on me longer. My chest tightened, heat rising in the room. "I've noticed," he said suddenly, "you've been different around me." The words landed like a spark in dry grass. My throat went dry, my palms slick. "Different how?" I asked, feigning ignorance. He leaned back, smirking slightly, his confidence unsettling. "Like you're holding something back. Like you want to say something but don't." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. He wasn't wrong. And the worst part, he knew it. I looked away, telling myself to shut this down before it went further. But when I turned back, his eyes hadn't moved. They were steady, fixed on me with a hunger I recognized all too well. And then it happened. A simple touch. His hand brushing mine on the armrest of the couch. It was small, almost nothing, but it shattered every wall I'd built inside myself. I didn't pull away. The silence between us grew unbearable, thick with things unspoken. My heart pounded so loud I swore he could hear it. And when he leaned in slightly, closing the space between us, I didn't stop him. 1 second, I was frozen. The next, I was giving in. The first kiss was tentative, almost testing. But when I didn't resist, when instead I leaned into it, everything exploded. Years of restraint, of bottled desire, of silent temptation spilled out in one reckless moment. My hands gripped him, his breath hot against mine, the room spinning as every rational thought collapsed. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was dangerous. I knew if anyone ever found out, my life would never be the same. But none of that mattered in the heat of that moment. What mattered was the fire roaring through me, the connection I hadn't felt in years, the reckless thrill of giving into something forbidden. We didn't stop with a kiss. The night stretched long, every boundary erased, every secret desire dragged into the light. What had started as curiosity turned into something raw, undeniable, unstoppable. By the time it was over, the weight of what I'd done crashed down on me. I sat there, drenched in sweat, staring at the floor while he leaned back, breathing heavily, a satisfied grin on his face. "We shouldn't have done that," I muttered, my voice hoarse. "Maybe not," he said. "But we did." There was no regret in his tone. No hesitation, just certainty. That certainty terrified me, because deep down, I knew this wasn't going to be a one-time mistake. The way he looked at me, the way I'd already given in, it was only the beginning. Later that night, when I finally lay in bed alone, the silence of the house pressed down on me. Guilt gnawed at my chest, but beneath it was something far worse, desire. The memory of his touch, his breath, his gaze, it consumed me, replaying over and over until sleep finally dragged me under. I told myself I'd never let it happen again. That it was a slip, a moment of weakness, nothing more. But lies have a way of sounding like truth when you're desperate enough to believe them. And the truth was, I already knew, I wanted more. The morning after our mistake, I woke up with a weight pressing against my chest heavier than anything I'd ever felt. My house was silent, yet inside me was chaos. Every detail of the night replayed like a cruel movie, the way it started with a glance, a touch, then spiraled into something I never thought I'd do. I had crossed a line I swore was untouchable, and now the floor beneath me felt like it could cave in at any second. He had left before dawn, quietly slipping out like a shadow, but not without one last look at me. That look, calm, confident, almost satisfied, made it clear he wasn't burdened by guilt the way I was. For him, it was adventure. For me, it was destruction waiting to happen. All day, I avoided mirrors. I couldn't stand to see my own face. My wife called around lunchtime, her voice casual, asking how things were at home. I lied, telling her it was quiet, uneventful. My chest tightened as I realized how easy it was to lie when you had to. That terrified me more than the act itself. When night fell again, I thought the guilt might ease, but it didn't. It grew sharper. I walked through the house in silence, every corner whispering reminders of what had happened. The couch in the living room, the dim glow of the TV, everything carried his shadow. For days, I expected someone to notice. My wife, my stepson, my daughter, someone had to see it written on my face. But no one did. Life carried on, and I carried the secret like a stone tied around my neck. The strangest part was how normal everything looked from the outside. My wife chatted about her work. My stepson asked for help with errands. My daughter called from university with stories about her classes. To them, I was the same man I'd always been. To me, I was unrecognizable. And then, as if fate wanted to test me, he came back. It was a week later. He showed up at the house with his usual charm, acting as if nothing had changed. My stepson was home this time, so there was no danger, no chance of repeating what we'd done. But the tension was still there, humming beneath the surface like a live wire. His eyes found mine across the room, steady, knowing, deliberate. I avoided looking too long, afraid my wife or stepson would notice. But even in stolen glances, I could feel it, the pull, the unspoken acknowledgement that we had crossed into dangerous territory and neither of us was pretending otherwise. That night, when the house was finally quiet again, my phone buzzed. A simple message from him. You can't stop thinking about it either, can you? My breath caught. He was right, I couldn't. I stared at the message for what felt like hours, torn between deleting it and responding. I knew one reply would open the door wider, but silence felt like a lie I couldn't maintain. Finally, with shaking hands, I typed, "We can't let that happen again." His reply came almost instantly, "We will." I dropped the phone like it had burned me. My heart raced, my body trembling. I told myself I wouldn't answer again, that this had to stop before it consumed me. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had already surrendered. The days that followed were the hardest. Every time he came around, I acted like nothing had happened, but inside, I was fighting myself. The guilt gnawed at me, but so did the hunger. It was like being trapped between two fires, each one threatening to burn me alive. I thought about my wife more than ever during those days. About the years we had shared, the trust she placed in me, the loyalty she believed I had never broken. Looking at her while carrying this secret felt like a crime in itself. Sometimes I wanted to confess, to free myself from the weight. But then I pictured the devastation in her eyes, the way it would shatter everything we'd built. That was a truth I couldn't bear to face. So I kept silent. I smiled when I had to, worked when I had to, played the role of the dependable husband and father. But beneath the mask, I was unraveling. The guilt didn't make me stop. If anything, it made the temptation stronger. Because once you've crossed the line, the fear of being caught only sharpens the thrill. Every look, every message, every brush of his hand when no one was watching, it all pushed me further into a secret world I could never share. And as much as I hated myself for it, a part of me didn't want it to end. I often ask myself why I'm writing this, why I'm letting these words spill into the open even if no one will ever know my name. The truth is, silence has been eating me alive. I've carried this secret for so long that it feels like poison running through my veins, and confessing, anonymously, hidden behind shadows, is the only way I can breathe. No one in my family knows what happened. Not my wife, not my stepson, not my daughter. To them, I am still the man I've always been, loyal, dependable, predictable. They see stability when they look at me, but what they don't see are the cracks beneath the surface. They don't see the nights I lie awake staring at the ceiling, guilt pressing down like a weight on my chest. They don't see the moments when my phone buzzes and my pulse spikes, afraid it might be him, afraid it might not. He and I never stopped completely. That's the part one struggle to admit even here. After that first night, after that first mistake, we told ourselves it was a one-time thing. But temptation doesn't let go that easily. It lingered like a shadow, always waiting. And sometimes, when the opportunity was too perfect, we gave in again. Each time felt like walking closer to a cliff's edge, knowing one wrong step would send everything crashing down. I know what you might be thinking. Why not stop? Why not choose loyalty over lust? I've asked myself that countless times. The only answer I can give is that the human heart is weaker than we like to believe. We build our lives around rules and vows, but when faced with temptation that shakes us to the core, those rules can crumble faster than we ever imagined. With him, it wasn't just physical, it was the way he looked at me. Like he saw me, not just the father figure, not just the husband holding a family together, but the man underneath. It was intoxicating, dangerous, and impossible to resist. And yet, every moment with him came with a price. The fear of being discovered was constant. The paranoia of every glance, every word, every silence, it consumed me. When my wife kissed me goodnight, I wondered if she could taste the betrayal on my lips. When my daughter hugged me, I wondered if she sensed the weight I carried. When my stepson laughed with his best friend, I wondered if he had any idea what we were hiding right under his nose. The irony is, I wasn't caught. Not once. To this day, no one suspects. I still sit at the dinner table, still mow the lawn, still play the role everyone expects of me. From the outside, nothing has changed. But inside, I know everything has. That's why I remain anonymous. Because if the truth ever came out, it would destroy more than just me. It would destroy the family I built, the trust of my wife, the bond between my stepson and his closest friend. It would unravel lives that don't deserve to be broken just because I made choices I can never take back. So I write here, faceless and nameless, letting the words carry my confession into the void. Maybe someone will read it and judge me. Maybe someone will read it and understand the weakness that lives in all of us. Either way, it's no longer locked inside me. Do I regret it? That's the hardest question. Regret is complicated. I regret betraying my wife, betraying the family that trusted me. I regret the lies, the secrecy, the nights I stared at my reflection and didn't recognize the man looking back. But I can't say I regret the moments themselves. They were real, raw, alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. And that, perhaps, is what haunts me most of all. Because sometimes the greatest mistakes aren't the ones you forget, they're the ones you'll never stop remembering. So here I am, nameless, faceless, hiding behind anonymity but finally speaking the truth. This is my confession, my burden, my terrible mistake. And as long as no one ever knows, life will go on as it always has. But deep down, I know I will never be the same man again. I never thought I'd write this confession. But one night changed everything. This is an anonymous true infidelity story, told from a man who lived a double life behind the walls of his own home. What started as an innocent evening, his daughter returning home, his stepson's best friend staying the night, turned into the spark of a secret he never imagined he'd carry. In this 5-chapter anonymous confession, he reveals how a simple glance shifted into temptation, and how one reckless moment became a hidden affair that still haunts him to this day. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more real-life infidelity confessions, anonymous secrets, and forbidden relationship tales. Hit the bell icon so you never miss the next scandalous confession. Share your thoughts below. Do you think secrets like this should stay hidden forever?